That's okay.
Please go ahead. Thank you so much for what you're sharing.
No, that's okay. I don't know where I was at. I was kind of in a little bit of a flow
Here's a
state, but
product to
so
fix us, to
so
make.
basically, as women, our whole life we've been told, we're not good enough. Our hair color is not the right color. Our eyes aren't the right shape or color, and we're not the right size. But here's a product that can fix us, whether that's a protein shake or it's a new hair dye or a new service. That's costing us not only our health, but also the money out of our pockets. But what if we were never broken, and what if it was just our environment? And there's kind of two lenses to this. There's the emotional and the physical component through marketing and media, making us feel like we need to be something else other than what we divinely are and we're created to be. And then there's also the health component as well, telling us that our hormones are imbalanced and here's a product that can fix us. Or we're broken and we can't do exactly what we were designed to do. And so here's a product that can fix us. And that's either charged to our pocket directly or to subsidies through tax and things like this. And so I'm going to talk about our environment and specifically our modern environment today and how that's actually designed to work against our function, and how it really is this modernization of our environment through different facets and assets, which I will talk about and explain on a little bit more, that's actually causing the deterioration of our health. And we're actually designed, and our body has an innate drive to do exactly what it was designed to do and to heal and to live optimally in line with our purpose and our vision and to be connected to source when it's given a natural environment and an environment that is supportive of its function. And the environment that has been built for us today through modern living is just not supportive of our function. And that's when we actually see disease such as hormonal imbalance. Um, and I guess let's talk about hormonal imbalance for a second. And so, that's something that women are, I feel like every second woman has a hormonal imbalance or they have a thyroid condition or hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. And it's becoming such a common name. But what actually is causing that, and how is modern medicine actually treating that? So if you're diagnosed with a thyroid condition, whether you're treated by Western medicine, which says, here's a hormone replacement that you can take, that will then actually, your blood test will show now that you've got more of that hormone in your body. And so your condition is fixed. But the root cause is still there as to why your hormones were imbalanced in the first place, or your thyroid was not able to function optimally. And so thinking about that, that shows that Western medicine isn't taking a root cause approach. And if you're on this call, I gather that you already have gathered that yourself from this time. And now let's look at, I guess, alternative medicine. Let's look at herbalism. So, that's kind of the same asset. It's like, okay, so you have a hormone imbalance and here's a herb that can fix that. And while that can be great temporarily, and it is a natural alternative, it's still not getting to the root cause of what was actually happening. And perhaps that is from our environment. And so I'd like to share a little presentation with you guys and just kind of run through it. And then I guess we can take some questions and do what Amalia does at the end. But I just encourage you to be open-minded. This is probably a little bit more sciencey than what you're used to listening to on this Women's Circle, but it really is important information. And I've put a lot of effort to try and make some very complex topics more easily understandable for you guys. I think I might need to be a host to be able to share my screen though.
Let me, how do I do that? I forgot, but I'll remember
Oh,
in a second.
Amalia, you can
Ah,
go to on the bottom.
yeah, I think I got it. I think I can
Okay.
do, allow,
Participants, and then like click go up and share screen.
yeah, I think I made you the host.
Oh yeah, perfect. Great. All right, I don't know what's open on my web browser, but I don't know. We'll try and find this screen. Here we go. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I asked you here to be sciencey, so don't apologize for it. I'm here for the science.
Oh, okay, well, that's good. Well, maybe you won't get it. Maybe I've made it too
Oh
fancy.
no.
I hope I don't have to turn the light on, but I think everyone can kind of see me, so that's nice. Oh, my brightness is just down. All right. So quantized, I get so excited about this because like this stuff literally changed my life, like my spiritual, my mental, and my physical life. And I've just watched in the last 2 years, like hundreds of women's lives transform through working on their health, which influences our spiritual health and vice versa as well. So quantized individuals. So what does quantized mean? Quantized actually means driven by light. which every process in our body is quantized. Every single process in our body is driven by light. And so the light in our environment, the light inside of us, and the light that comes from each other all impacts the way that our physiology runs. And I'm going to be unpacking this and sharing some of the science behind what this actually means. Okay, so how does our body tell time? So just because I can pick up my phone and I can say, oh, okay, it's 5:20 p.m. right now. And, I know that this call was set to start at 5 o'clock and it might actually go a little bit over. So I'm sorry, I'll try and be quick. My body doesn't actually know that time. So my body actually runs on a different time. And so if there's this disconnect between my consciousness and my body, how on earth does my body know what time it is, right? Well, my body actually knows what time it is through the light in my environment. And so all day long, the light frequencies that are coming from the sun are constantly changing, right? We don't see like rays of UV, and we actually can't see UV light at all, but we don't see rays of blue and violet and red coming from the sun. We just see like illumination. But it truly is this different blend of light frequencies that change from the minute that the sun rises all the way till sun sets. And so as these frequencies are changing, that is actually communicating to my body what time it is. And then my body takes this information and says, okay, it's sunrise. Kiera has to rev up her thyroid hormone. Kiera has to get ready for the day. Kiera has to hydrate her body. She has to make this metabolic water to keep herself hydrated. And so it really is this cue, this external cue that my body's using to tell time, and then to not only set my circadian rhythm, right, which we know circadian rhythm is important for the sleep-wake cycle, but it's also important from everything else, from hormone function to fertility to thyroid function, for neurological disorders, neurological health, for taking out bad cells, for governing apoptosis and autophagy, our repair mechanisms. The light around us truly is dictating and communicating this information to our body. And so the realm of science is actually studying this. And this is really cutting edge modalities. Is called quantum and circadian health, the interconnection between biophysics and biology, which is super cool. And so basically, whether you believe in evolution or you believe, and this is one of my favorite parts, or you believe in God, then you believe that we evolved to live in perfect harmony with our environment, and that we are in no way separate from the energy and the light that is outside of our windows. Or if you believe in God and you're religious, then you believe that the natural world was designed to suit our function perfectly. And so it makes no sense that the sun that's been here for all eternity is designed to make us sick. We come out of our mums with no shoes on our feet, with no clothes, with no sunglasses, with no sunscreen. And perhaps maybe it's the addition of these things that's actually causing our demise. And also feel free to ask any questions along the way. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking. So coupled systems. So our world is full of coupled systems. I love the quote, to light a candle is to cast a shadow. And that's a coupled system. There's no way around it. There's no breaking that. There's no getting out of that, right? Just like life and death is a coupled system. And so us as women and men and the light in our environment, that's a coupled system. And so we need to exist with each other. If you take away one or the other, it impacts the world around us. Light and dark is also a coupled system. So we need darkness just as we need light. And this goes back to Chinese medicine as well, of the principles of yin and yang. And we can see this also in our hormones. So we can see this in cortisol and also melatonin, with cortisol being the hormone of the day, which is actually regulated by blue light in our environment. Oops, I'm just trying to invite someone into here. I can't see my little clicking thing. I have to invite people in now, Amalia, because I'm the host. Ah, I can't find my little cursor. Okay, well, I can't admit this person.
Did you do
what?
it?
Okay, yeah, I got her. I invited her, sorry. Yeah, so light and dark is a coupled system, and turns out our hormones are also coupled systems. So this reflection in nature, in this coupled system that we have evolved to utilize as our clock, as our internal clock to regulate our internal environment, also reflects these systems inside of us. So light means cortisol. It influences our cortisol production. It makes us stay awake. And then the absence of light influences our melatonin production, which is that hormone of the night. So it's these coupled systems that we see all through life that resonate and emanate in our entire physiology. So the root of life is buried in light and dark. And so that fundamental principle, you'll hopefully come to appreciate as the root of health, and something we really need to live by and embrace in order to be healthy. So the visible light spectrum. So something that's really cool to note is that we're actually born blind to 99% of everything that's around us. So the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically everything's light. So radio waves are light. The sun emits light, gamma rays, X-rays, it's just all light that's on a spectrum, right? And all of these frequencies are all around us all the time. How radios actually communicate to each other is they're all just running on the same frequency, that same light signal, if you will, right? We just can't see that light, so we call it an electromagnetic spectrum. But if you looked at this spectrum, we actually can only see 99% of that spectrum, which is called visible light. So this visible light is what we actually see through our eyes and paints the world that we see around us. But 99% of that we actually can't see, but our body can actually sense it. And it's utilizing that to make important decisions of how to run our biology. And so over evolution and time, before we invented the light bulb and before we invented smartphones and Wi-Fi, and we started utilizing these different spectrums of light in our environment, we didn't have them. And so over hundreds of thousands of years, our biology didn't evolve to make use of these frequencies at all. And so now, and as we'll learn throughout this lecture, that's actually interfering with our biology and how it runs. And, this is something my mum told me, like we'd go to the markets and there would be a man there selling hats saying, power lines and Wi-Fi is like making you sick. And we just all thought he was crazy, and and me too. But now the science is actually there, and you can kind of feel it by intuition, but it's really nice to see the science that's actually showing that these things can be quite detrimental to our health. So this is the electromagnetic spectrum that I just spoke about. So we have gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet light, so UV light that makes us tan and makes vitamin D. We actually can't see that. We also can't see infrared. Then we have the microwaves and the radio waves. And so this is just a spectrum. This is a light spectrum. The visible light spectrum that we actually utilize to see the world as we know it is only 1% of this spectrum, and it falls right in the middle. Also, something that's really cool to note is that through the double slit experiment, we actually know that light can act as a particle and both a wave, and that it's actually our perception that changes the way that light acts, right? And the way we perceive things. And so why can't we see infrared light and why can't we see ultraviolet light? Because they do things to our body that we're not able to change. So we're not able to change the perception and the way that these things manifest in our world. And that's why we can't see these things, because we were never meant to utilize them. Okay, so this is the fun part. These are some cool actionable takeaways that you can implement to influence your health. So sunrise. So I'm talking about how these light frequencies, they can either harm us or heal us. And so if you think about modern living, when was the last time that, most people watch the sunrise? It's never. But we actually need to get the sunrise in our eyes and on our skin every single day to help us stay healthy, from balancing out hormones, from creating pregnenolone, our master sex hormone. This light frequency of the morning, this red infrared light frequency, really is communicating and doing so many things for our body. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. So first of all, how should you watch the sunrise? I never thought I'd be telling someone how to do that, but we need to be watching it grounded. So it means our bare feet on our earth, because turns out when we put our bare feet on the earth, we're actually able to soak up energy from the earth, which keeps us healthy. And if we want to get sciencey, these are called electrons. And so the more electrons you have in your body, traditionally speaking, we actually always had our feet on the earth. And if your bare feet weren't on the earth, you actually had an animal skin around them, which is actually also conductive. So all day long, we're actually it's kind of like plugging your phone in on charge. We're always fully charged, right? But now with a modern environment, when I was living in the city, it could be months before my bare feet actually touched the earth. And so turns out that's actually cutting me off from an energy supply. So not only, we've been told and trained to believe that we only get energy through food, but we actually also get energy from sunlight itself hitting our skin, and also from the ground in which we step on. And so if you're never touching your bare feet to the earth, and you're never getting in the sunlight, you're actually cutting yourself off from 2/3 of the energy supply, which is super important for how our body functions. So how should we watch the sunrise? So we should watch it grounded. There's a really cool effect that happens when we actually see the sunrise whilst we're grounded. The damper the surface is, the more conductive it is. So if you have dry ground, perhaps like you want to pour some water on that or something, because the wetter it is, the more conductive and the more electrons you can actually suck up. So how long? For busy mums, or perhaps you don't have a lot of time in the morning, these things are instant. So it's not like you have to do them for a long period of time. Obviously, the longer you can do it, the better. But you know, as little as 30 seconds is just like a light stimulus in the eye communicating information to your body. So blocking artificial light prior to sunrise completely. Now, why is this? So if we're utilizing light in our environment to tell time, which then tells our body how to function, do you think that looking at your phone, which is set to the same light as midday sun, is a good idea? Well, it's not, because essentially what you're doing is you're telling your body, hey, Kiera, you've actually slept all day. It's now midday. And so you're actually missing all those key light frequencies and all those hormonal regulation patterns because you're exposing yourself to this very bright blue light. And so it turns out different frequencies of light do different things for our body. And blue light actually is how we tell time. And so blue light is the highest in the morning, mid-morning to midday. And this is actually what increases cortisol production in our body. And so if it's midday and you wake up first thing, you're actually going to increase your cortisol, which is going to tank your fertility and completely throw your hormones out of balance. And we'll go into a little bit as to why that is soon. So no sunglasses as well, no contacts or prescriptions. You want to be able to have those light frequencies in your eyes. And as minimal clothing as you can have, the better as well. And so why is this? So first light to sunrise is very high infrared light. So what does this do to our body? It structures our water. So we've been told that water in our body is the exact same as water in a glass, but it's actually not. When it comes into contact with certain light frequencies, it actually changes and becomes structured to power our body and give us more energy. So that's super important that we get this infrared light in the morning. So this infrared light also tells our body to make water, so metabolic water. I guess we've all heard like, you're so dehydrated, you have cellular dehydration, but really it's not about drinking more water. It's about telling your body and your cells that it needs to make water. And so this infrared light that comes from the sun, 42% of the light that comes from the sun is infrared. And so this is really important for our body to make water and to give us energy. And so if we're indoors all the time under artificial blue light, that's going to raise our cortisol and it's going to stop our body from making water and giving us energy. And so that's a little bit of a brief recap. It goes much deeper than this, but watching sunrise is the first thing that I tell people to do when they're looking to increase their health. It makes you feel so good. It also turns an aromatic amino acid in your eye to serotonin, which is great for mental health. So anyone suffering with depression or anxiety, watching morning sunrise should be their best friend. So blue light at night, we'll quickly skim over this because we've kind of already spoke about it. But blue light at night increases our cortisol. And so we have the circadian rhythm and it needs to stay intact. So everyone talks about melatonin, right? So melatonin is the hormone that makes us feel sleepy and tells us to go to bed at night, right? And now everyone's on these melatonin supplements. All these kids are on melatonin supplements, which is horrible because it actually thins your retina. You know, we have a pandemic of children that are wearing prescription glasses, but the artificial light at nighttime is actually thinning their retina, decreasing their melatonin and giving them eye problems. And so that's a big issue. You know, every second child is on melatonin supplements, but we need to realize as mums to be, as women, that artificial blue light at night really is destroying our melatonin, which is destroying our health, not only us, especially children, right? Because fortunately for me, I grew up in a time when I didn't have 5G around. I didn't have all these artificial lights all the time. But children now, they haven't had a chance to grow up and let their brain form in a natural environment. And so this artificial light is just so much more impactful on their health, right? And And so melatonin is not just important to make us sleepy, it also governs a process. And if you've kind of, I guess, zoomed out of this conversation, that's totally fine. But this part here is something you really need to listen to. So apoptosis, right? This is a process that takes out bad cells from our body before they can manifest into cancers, right? And cause disease. So if you're apoptosis, and this is not my words, this is the words of my university biology professor, apoptosis in cancer is broken. So if you have a cancer, apoptosis is broken, it's not actually working, which means that something is stopping your body from being able to take out those bad cells from the very beginning when they first became cancerous. So your cell underwent damage through whatever it was in your modern life, right? But if you have apoptosis, that should have been taken out, right? Before that cell could manifest and replicate and make more of itself and turn into a tumor, right? Whether it's cancerous or non-cancerous. Turns out melatonin actually governs apoptosis. So if you have artificial light at nighttime, you're decreasing your melatonin, which is stopping apoptosis from working while you're sleeping. So it's kind of like the equivalent of if you don't clean your kitchen before you go to bed and then you wake up in the morning and there's just stuff everywhere and you wake up and you're like, oh, I've got to clean all this before I can make breakfast. And day after day, that's kind of just how it goes until things get so bad that you have nothing to utilize to cook breakfast or to eat your cereal out of, right? That's the same thing that's happening in our body when we're not utilizing apoptosis. And so making sure that there's no blue light in our environment after sunset is super important to really support this process of apoptosis, this cell repair process, just as nature designed. You know, we've always been exposed to toxins and chemicals, but we have such a rise in chronic disease since the 1900s when the light bulb was actually first created, right? That's really when this rise in chronic disease, you know, not acute illness anymore. Our hospitals are actually overrun with chronic disease, and it really just correlates with the invention of the light bulb and this change in the electromagnetic spectrum. All right, so this is a bit of an overwhelming picture, but basically I just wanted to show you that this chemical here is called POMC. It's a massive brain chemical, and the light that we're around dictates what that gets turned into. So this big chemical, right, is in our brain, and it can become absolutely anything. It could help with inflammation, it can make us feel stressed, it can give us a tan, and what actually dictates what that chemical gets cleaved up into and at what time does it do that? It actually depends on what light we're around. And so I said before that artificial blue light makes us stressed, it increases cortisol. That is because it cuts a hormone called ACTH, which is derived from POMC to upregulate our cortisol function, right? And so it's really important that we really block artificial light during the day and we're always outside getting connected to these natural light frequencies that really regulate our hormone production. So melatonin, we kind of spoke about this already. Cortisol and melatonin, they're like arch enemies. They're not around at the same time. So every time that you're increasing cortisol, so anytime that you're around blue light, you're decreasing melatonin and vice versa, which is also why trapping yourself in the darkness during the day is probably not a good idea either. And so our body is always acting in our best interest. It's not that our body is broken, it's that our body is not given the right signals to be able to function optimally and do exactly what it was designed to do. So anytime that our body is in a state of disease, that's our body trying to do its best to function in an environment where it's not getting fed the proper light signals. And so if we're stressed, whether that be physical stress, whether that be from traumatic events, something happening in our personal life, emotional, or physical stress through, like, let's say, working out late at nighttime, being exposed to artificial blue light, this is all going to cause our body stress and upregulate cortisol, which is a big problem in terms of looking after our hormonal health. And so, yes, you know, artificial blue light and things like this is a really big problem, but it's anything that raises cortisol at night. So this could be going to the gym at 9 o'clock at night. This could be having an argument with your partner. This could be anything that impacts sleep and the hormonal regulation that happens around that time. So this is something else that I want to go over just quickly. And it's a pretty easy concept to understand. So our fertility hormones, so all of our fertility hormones, they all come from, just like POMC can become anything. Our fertility hormones are all derived from one hormone called pregnenolone, which is actually made in our body, our mitochondria, when our body gets the right light signals. So, we actually make pregnenolone, and then that light also tells our body what fertility hormones to make out of that pregnenolone. Only if we're super stressed, so our cortisol is too high, again, this can be mental stress, emotional stress, trauma, or physical stress through blue light or waking up, looking at your phone, or going to bed around a ton of artificial blue light, non-native electromagnetic fields, eating a heap of sugar first thing in the morning, all these things, they just raise your cortisol so high in the morning, right? And now, because our body is always acting in our best interest, our body actually, right? So when it's like 8 a.m., right? Let's say it's 8 a.m., my body's made pregnenolone. So my body is trying to decide whether it's a good time for Kiera to make a baby. So is Kiera safe? Is she feeling good? Does she have shelter? Does she have food? Is she feeling really good? Does she feel good enough to have a baby and to be fertile? Or is Kiera stressed? Is she unsafe? Is she not functioning well? Is she sick? Does she need to get out of this environment? So my body, when it makes this pregnenolone, it's sensing what my environment is doing to decide if I'm in a good position to have a baby. And so if my body decides, yep, Kira's super healthy, her cortisol's down, she's, really healthy, we're going to convert pregnenolone into her fertility hormones so that she can have a baby, right? But if my cortisol's too high, and I've used this method to reverse infertility now in maybe 40 plus women, just this one thing, it won't make my fertility hormones, and it'll actually convert all that pregnenolone to make more cortisol so that it can keep me safe, right? Because our body is acting in our best interest. So it's like, no, Kira's not safe. She needs more cortisol. She needs to be on edge because we want her to survive and then eventually reproduce. So that's a big issue. And now it's not chronic stress that's actually causing the infertility, although it can be. Women have so much on our plate now trying to absolutely save the world, run a household, be an entrepreneur, all these things. More commonly than not, and I wish I was joking when I said this, it's actually just looking at your phone first thing in the morning, waking up, or turning on the lights in your house, or opening up your fridge. Because when you wake up, your body is instantly sensing the environment around you to regulate its hormones. And so if you expose your body to blue light first thing in the morning, you're asking for a hormonal imbalance, you're raising your cortisol, and then your body will take that and make more cortisol instead of deciding that it's a good time for you to be fertile. And yeah, so I just tried not to overwhelm you too much, but that's just some of the information that's coming out at the moment, showing just how much our light environment impacts our health. And so we're really not broken. We're actually just trying to function in an environment that is designed to make us sick. And while you can be prescribed hormone supplements, you can be prescribed herbs or bioidentical hormones, or you can be told that you're infertile and you're not making enough of XYZ hormone. The root cause is fundamentally why is our body making the decision not to produce this hormone, and it's because it's being fed the wrong information through the light environment that we're around. And so in terms of hormonal health, of looking after our health, especially as we age, menstruation, things like this, it's super important that we really do consider our light environment as one of the leading factors of our health and something that we need to acknowledge as fact to keep us healthy. And so, Amalia, that's my little spiel. I hope it wasn't too much.
Myself. Okay. It was not too much. It was not. It was so good. It was so good. And luckily, people can revisit this recording. And I'm going to ask you for one little more donation of your time and give me some Cliff's notes that we can send the women so that they can have a reference page for after this. So, just to, like we discussed, a few key points and maybe a few good resources and products that you like for blocking blue light. I know that there are some women here who have questions, so I'm going to let them ask the questions. And then if there's anything in my mind that is unasked at the end, then I might jump in. But I would really love, Tia, you just said you had some questions, so I'm like, shoot.
Yeah. So I have a couple.
Mhm.
My first one is I have a friend who's very popular on Twitter.
Mhm.
And something that he talks about is that you can use that there's like a big difference between overhead light
Mhm.
and then light that's like lower in your range of vision. So
Mhm.
that at nighttime, changing your environment lighting to like below eye level can help with melatonin production if you're not able to like completely cut out artificial light. Um, One of my big questions is you said that you got sick and then that kind of led you into finding natural medicine. And
Mhm.
my question for you, as someone who was in the medical field before that, what were your what were your thoughts about natural medicine before you got sick? And also, um, a lot of people in the a lot of the feedback I get from people in the medical field is that like people that take control of their own um one of like the really negative comments I hear about people who take control of their environments and their health is that you like laymen or like people who aren't medical professionals don't have the like knowledge base to do that. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that too. Sorry, it's like a very couple of questions there.
No, that's okay. They're great questions. And if I miss any of them, just remind me, I might forget. So the first one. So melatonin is actually made in the morning sunlight. So when an aromatic amino acid called tryptophan gets access to UV light, which is like a high intensity light, it actually converts itself to serotonin, which makes us feel good and addicts us to like getting up in the morning. And then this serotonin gets converted to melatonin and then back again. So that melatonin is essentially stored morning sunlight, which then
Right,
gets released in the absence of blue light. So
right.
it's the absence of blue light that really says to my pineal gland, okay, it's time to get that melatonin out and pumping, um, which is cool. And so the underhead lighting is really good because we have different, like where the receptors lie in our eyes, the angle matters, right? So
Yeah.
just like the angle of the light coming over that mountain, hitting my eyes is actually also communicating location to me. Um, and so, yeah, so something that's up high is going to be more like the sun, right? Whereas something down low is more like sunrise or sunset. So while it's still important to have no blue light, having a red light that's, I guess, more, lower rather than being overhead is definitely a good thing. Yeah. Does that answer that part?
Yep.
Cool. So the second part was my experience, was it, with the medical industry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Mhm.
your like thoughts, I guess, pre like finding natural medicine and then
Mhm.
post.
Yeah. So this is what's interesting because some people, when they have their awakening, it's kind of like little by little. For me, it was like all at once. It was like I was a medicine student and then my life literally got just destroyed. Like I was working at the university as well, mentoring first year students. I was told, I'm so successful because I'm the first person in my family to go to university. So I very much had that like hierarchy thinking of how life's meant to be and like what success was. And, I was so excited to have the house and the car and all these things after university. So my life was completely turned upside down. So pretty much I was as centralized as they come. I didn't really know anything about natural medicine at all. I think I saw an acupuncturist a few times. Just thought that natural medicine, my mum was into natural medicine, so I just completely, blocked that from my mind, right? Because our parents just don't know anything, right? Until you tell 25 and then you're like, oh wow, my mum was right this whole time. Sorry, mum. But yeah, so I didn't really like it's funny because it's kind of like I was vibrating on a level that like natural medicine like never made its way into my realm. Like I never remember anyone talking to me about natural medicine. I never came in contact with that ever until I got sick. And so yeah, I got sick. I had vertigo, painful like menstrual cycle, something I never had before, memory loss, fatigue, all these things. Um, and that correlated with my change in environment. And so I was so sick, I was asking my professors at university, what can I do? They're like, go vegan, made things worse. And just by pure luck, I had a friend on Instagram who was an acupuncturist from the US who I actually just met in real life, which is great after like 5 years. Such a special moment. But he said to me, like, Kiera, you're not sick. Your environment is making you sick. And I was like, I know everything about health. Like, look at my HDs on all my assignments. Like, I know everything about health. And I was like, what is this person talking about? And he just told me, just watch the sunrise. And I was like, whatever, like, I'll just do it at this point. And I literally, after 2 days, I felt so much better, like 40% better. I couldn't believe it. I was waking up with energy. I didn't have vertigo. I could actually do the dishes after cooking my meals because I wasn't just so fatigued. And then that kind of just led me down this rabbit hole of, right, because my intentions were pure, like going into nursing, like I really wanted to help people. I grew up in a very sick environment, had very sick people around me. And so my intention, as most of the healthcare professionals are, is very pure. They just receive the wrong education. And so I guess still having this intention and then actually seeing myself being able to heal outside of the medical industry, I was like, this is like something I need to look into because, if I've healed this so quickly. And I know that so many of my friends and the people in the hospitals are suffering with these same illnesses. Why isn't everyone doing it? And why do my clients and my patients in the hospital never see the sunrise? And why do they have blue light around them 24/7? And why are they being waken up every 2 hours to have their obs taken? So all these things. So yeah, I guess my mindset changed very quickly when I started seeing how impactful these things were. And so I studied like literally 3 years decentralized as if I was at university, from people in the field who are doctors and put out this information. And thankfully, when I started, I had to read all the books and the journal articles, but this space is now growing very quickly, that there's people online doing like YouTube videos and doing podcasting. And, there's a quantum biology collective now, which is a course you can take to educate yourself on these things. So, it's a lot easier now to learn, but it's definitely growing. And I can't remember what you asked here about the layman's terms or something like this.
It was really, you kind of answered it, but it was really just your opinion on like the medical field or people in the medical field kind of
Yeah.
naysaying people trying to find the answers on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, so in university, and I remember like learning, there's a different word for big, just so that people don't understand what you're saying. Like doctors use such big words, and there's literally a whole subject on that, like telling you how to change your vocabulary to these big words, which is just really confusing. But you don't have to use distal, proximal. You can just use normal words that everyone knows. And now I know it's to create such a disconnect so that you feel like you don't know what's going on, or like you put them on a pedestal or a hierarchy, right? So that you feel like, oh, you're not smart enough to understand, and health's so complex. Something that I do now really is breaking down the science in a way that people can actually understand, and you actually don't need to know the science. Like, I never thought I'd be breaking down science just to tell people to go outside and get under the sunlight. But unfortunately, that's the day and age we're in, because we've been so programmed, especially my generation, to only believe what we read in textbooks. And so unless you actually understand the nitty-gritty and break that down for people, they're less likely to change. Some people will, but just depends what type of person they are, especially doctors and things. Like if I was at a ski resort the other day, and I took a client call, and it was really busy. And there was a gentleman sitting next to me, and it was a call where I was giving them their healthcare plan. And he said to me after I was done, and I have this sticker on my laptop that says real light comes from the sun. And he said to me, excuse me, what do you do? And I told him what I do. And he said, oh, a nutritionist. Like, what type of nutrition? I said, well, I actually, I talk about artificial light and this. And he's like, well, I'm a doctor. And I was like, oh, this is great. And so being able to actually explain the science to him, he actually is texting me now, and he's, more likely to, I guess, inclined to actually believe you and understand when you can use those big words, which is sad, but that's just something that I found. And then your last question was, I can't remember, sorry.
You got it. You answered them.
Okay, sweet, amazing. Does anyone else have any questions?
Hi, Kiera. I do.
Hi.
Hi, and I think you have a couple in the chat too. I'm not sure if Amalia wants to read them to you, but my question is related to the difference in how these environmental factors affect women versus men. Because, and I'm asking obviously for personal reasons, uh, because I am a person who would like to have a baby with my partner who is a man, and I'm just curious if the light exposure will affect him in the same way, or if this mainly affects female hormones.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. Thank you for asking it. So women, we actually feel the effects of our environment so much more than men, which is sad, right? Because I feel like so many women, I don't know, they get sick, we get sick, because we feel the environment much quicker than a man, right? Because we're more intuitive, and that's actually by design. So we actually inherit, and if you don't know this, it's super cool, but I'm such a nerd, so maybe it's not cool for you guys, but we actually inherit 100% of our mitochondria from our mum. So we actually inherit 100% of our mitochondria directly from our mum. We get none from our dad at all. And so in school, even in nursing school, I was taught we only have one DNA, and that's actually your genomic DNA. Turns out we have two. One of them is our mitochondrial DNA, which is called mtDNA. And we inherit that solely from our mom, which is incredible. So we actually, we have more of a responsibility to look after that mitochondria, to inherit good mitochondria and energy metabolism to our children. So women are also different because we have high levels of leptin. So adipose tissue, so fat on our body. And that's by fertile design, because that's signaling safety, food storage, all these things to our body, right? Great for hormonal health. Only this comes as at an expense, which means that we're way more sensitive to our environment, which is a good thing, because our job, and I won't get into the science, our job is actually to look at our environment, to feel our environment, the light we see and the light we can't see, and actually pass this information on to our child through our mitochondria to influence their development to the world they're coming into. An example of this is, let's say I'm born in Alaska and it's super cold, and my dad is from Australia and he's Aboriginal descent, right? So his mum's Aboriginal, my mum's Aboriginal forever. So if we had a baby together, my child inherits my mitochondria, not his. And so the way that our mitochondria are designed and the way they function, they're not all the same. Depending on where we are, they function differently, right, to suit us for that environment. So my child's mitochondria is actually more adapted to function in a cold environment. So that's just an example of how we pass on our information from our environment to our child to set them up for success, really. Now, because we have high levels of fat in our body, that also means that we have high levels of cytokines. So that's basically, if you picture a glass of inflammation, essentially, right? And if we're starting from scratch, men have an empty glass of inflammation when they I don't know, when they hit 20 years old or whatever, if they're healthy. Women are actually starting off on the back foot. So we actually are always a glass half full of inflammation, right? Which means that in terms of getting sick, or that glass actually overflowing, it takes far less stressor. So whether that be emotional stress, physical stress, poor input signal through our light environment, whatever it is, we feel that effect much more quickly, right? And that's actually a good thing. That's by design. But it means that in terms of functioning in a modern environment, we're more likely to get sick than men. So we have to do a little bit more to look after our health. And it's not always easy to do, right? Because we have jobs now, we have to do, and it's also a great thing. We just have a lot on our plate. And so, yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question. I think that he will feel the effects too, but it might take him a little bit longer. And they're so different. They run on a 24-hour cycle. We have a 28-day cycle, infraradian rhythms. We have all these hormones that are quantized, right? They don't have as many as we do. They have like 2. We have tons of them. So we're so much more complex. We also need more sleep, more light. And we're just more fragile creatures. And that's a beautiful thing. Something that I see in my practice and something that's actually really relevant right now is I have a husband and a wife. They just moved from, I think it was like Minnesota to Florida, and the wife's got really, really sick. So she's put on all this weight. She's not feeling good. She has hormone imbalance. And the husband was just saying, oh, you're eating too much food because you're stressed because of the move. 8 months later, he starts to suffer with the exact same symptoms, weight gain, fatigue, vertigo, all these things. And so now that he's not well, he said, okay, we need to get some help. So then they hired me. And so that's actually an example of how men actually feel the environment too, but it just takes them a little bit longer to feel that. And perhaps it isn't you that's broken, maybe it's just your environment.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
That's okay. Amalia, did you want to jump into the
Well, yeah, a couple things that the ladies' questions inspired in me. We're naturally we're supposed to be different than men, right? And that's a beautiful thing by design, biology, and yet culturally we were actually really encouraged to be more like men, which has changed our physiology, our biology. So we've really encouraged ourselves to have much less body fat and are always kind of chasing that culturally. And we're also chasing success on the same terms. And so requiring ourselves to work and hold space and sort of conquer in the same way that men do. And we're obviously kind of waking up to the differences that there are inherently between men and women, and that we can be incredibly successful and desirable without chasing those things. But it's kind of a new conversation. And I guess what I am asking or saying, a little bit of both, is this concept of feminine energy, yin, this concept of embracing our femininity and redefining what feminism is, which is not chasing the qualities of a man, but rather in honoring the qualities of a female. Isn't that a huge contributing factor to these, as our physiology changes because of our lifestyle changes, that's what is messing with our hormones sometimes, often. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, look, it's a really hard time to live in. We're being told how to be and what we should be. And, for me as a young woman as well, I've struggled with this. So, you just don't even know. But I feel like it's like block out the external noise, come back to who you are, your center. It's hard because, now women work all the time. We're under the same stress as a man. We're working, we're living in a world that's designed for a man, that's designed off a 24-hour cycle. Even the size of hospital beds and everything is designed to suit a man's figure perfectly, not a woman's. And so we're trying to function in a man's world. And maybe that's a sign, the work day was originally created for men and not really for women, right? But now that we're working, this hasn't actually been addressed and changed to suit us in any way. So that's a problem. If we look back ancestrally as well, someone I love to talk about is the Hadza tribe. They're like the oldest living hunters and gatherers right now. And so they're from Tanzania Rift in Africa. The women, they pick tubers all day. So they go out, just outside of their ground, they pick the tubers and they bring them back. Men are the ones that go out and do the hunting. And so they're more prone to stress, right? But that's actually how God or evolution designed us. We talk about yin and yang. Men and women are the exact same thing. We're a coupled cycle. Women are designed to be receptive to their environment, to pass on this information to their children, and have this balance of inflammation so that we can be fertile and have the extra energy needed to birth healthy children. Men are designed to be the providers and to keep women safe, right? So that they have less stress, so their mitochondria can stay healthier, so that their mitochondria can be as healthy as it possibly can be to pass on to the next generation. And that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of nature. That's actually how they designed us to be. And so now, in my opinion, the thing is, it's 2024. Right now, we're kind of like, oh, I come from a family history where men didn't treat women that great, that's just how it was. And so I think that women being able to work gives them choice, right? Because they can actually leave a bad situation if they want to. And I think it's important for women to have voice, and throughout history as well, the media have done a great job of making us also demonize men in some circumstances, especially my generation, to the point where we want to be independent. But if you look back ancestrally, women were actually held in very high regard in most cultures. We look back at Egypt, even Scotland, like women were always consulted by their husbands on very serious matters. And so, is history has even been communicated to us in a truthful manner? Like, I don't know. But regardless, biology says that women are supposed to be under less stress. And so I think that trying to function and keep up and do absolutely everything in a man's world is probably not the best thing for our physiology. Something else that I think that's quite sad is that the traditional view of how we prepare for pregnancy is like making ourselves as thin as possible, working out in a blue light gym, stressing ourselves out, taking all these hormones, external supplements and things like this, but we're not actually told how to truly optimize for fertility. And turns out working out extensively, having a very low body fat percentage, being under blue light all the time, it ruins your mitochondrial health, like absolutely trashes your mitochondrial health. And the new studies that's coming out by Dr. Doug Wallace is actually showing that something called mitochondrial percent heteroplasmy, which is a really big word, but basically the health of your mitochondria, when that becomes damaged, that's actually what is causing neurological and spectrum disorders in children. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And it's something that I reverse in children in my practice as much as I possibly can. And we see massive improvements in ADHD symptoms, autism symptoms, because we're reversing the damage done to their mitochondria as best as we possibly can. Which is also further impacted by a modern environment on children's health because their brains aren't myelinated until they're 21 years old and all these things, right? So they're more susceptible to the influence of like artificial lighting, of radiation from phones and things like this. But so yeah, women think they're doing all these right things, working out all day, getting up before sunrise to go hit the gym before they go to work, before they come home and cook dinner and then stay up all night cleaning the house just to like do it all again or whatever your situation is. Working so hard, but real health actually comes from just doing less, connecting with your environment, getting out in the sunlight, and really just lowering your cortisol levels to fix your mitochondria. And so that's why this message is like so important to get out there for women, I believe.
Me too. And when it comes down to it, the science is so good. It's so important for people who have been taught to rely on it for knowing, but then we can just kind of go back to what makes sense on a very simplistic kind of natural level. And for me, this resonates with that so much, that part of me that if I'd never read a book in my life and you told me this, I would feel like this makes sense. You don't have to, you don't even have to be well-educated or well-read or even intelligent because this intelligence is built into us.
Yeah. And what even is education? Like, what even is intelligence? Like, the more I get into this, I'm like trying to undo my education, like undo like my so-called intelligence. Like, we're not very intelligent. Like, what's something that's just so easy to understand that like coincides with what you're saying? Animals in zoos suffer with the same illnesses that people do. Cataracts, cancers, tumors. Animals in the wild don't because they're not exposed to artificial lighting. Literally. And it just makes so much sense. It's like, yeah, the sun that you have been designed to live under for hundreds of thousands of years that you've evolved to be in no way separate from isn't designed to make you sick. It's designed to influence your biology, to give you information, right? And it's just such a simple concept. And when I heard this stuff, I was like, it resonated so deeply that perhaps it was the first time I'd heard truth in my entire life. Like, I actually just sobbed. I actually just cried because I was like, I can't believe that this is it. Like, this is it, guys. This is literally the medical breakthrough of ever. In 5 years, like it's gaining so much traction. I'm, very kind of influential, but very deep into like the holistic health space. And there's just so many podcasts, so many very influential people in the health space learning this stuff, communicating this stuff, that, it's not something that's going to be repressed. The data's out there, the science is out there. There's really good organizations now funding this work, right? Because if we think about how studies are funded, So, our textbooks are built off of journal articles that have been peer reviewed. And who pays for those studies to be done? Those experiments, pharmaceutical industries pay for those studies to be done. And so if you can't profit off of them, why would you invest in them? Like, you just wouldn't. It's a waste of money. So now there's these really cool organizations that have been funded by actually some courses on quantum biology, and then also some very rich people in the world are funding like the work being done on this, which is cool now, because we're actually seeing like the data and the science coming out.
It's exciting.
Yeah,
like
it's very exciting. And passion is like bred from like experience. I had a woman, well, actually my only client from my hometown, because I work online. She was told that she better start saving for IVF after 7.5 years of infertility, and told that she would never have a child. Naturally, she had exhausted all remedies, and 6 months into a protocol, she was pregnant, literally just by regulating her light environment. And so these things are incredible when you think of like $25,000 for IVF versus just waking up at sunrise, blocking artificial light, and getting outside.
not to mention what IVF does to you. Like, there's some very big costs. Right?
Exactly. Do you want to know something really cool, guys? So so I found a really cool, I'm just such a nerd, sorry. I found this journal article. I found this journal article online. And it was this really great article about how red light, so infrared light, red light, actually increases reproductivity in humans. And I was like, wow, this is such a good study. It's so in depth. Like, who funded it? And it was I'm sorry.
Pages.
It was actually an IVF center who's now using red light. So they stopped all the blue lights. They're actually using red light when they're doing the implantation, because they found out that it increases the rate of like insemination and like success by like 85%.
Wow.
So yeah.
I love
That's
that you
cool.
love the irony so much.
Yeah.
I just, because there's only a few people doing the research, I was like, who's funding this work? Like, they're going to put like big light out of business. And I was like, oh, it's an IVF center that doesn't tell people that red light's good for your health, but will use red lights when they're doing the conception thing.
Right. Yes.
Tia, I know that person on Instagram. I'm friends with him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's very big. He's a little bit biochemical for me, but he's super cool.
I've been following him for like a long time. When his account was much smaller, he was much more kind of straightforward and simple. And as he's gone, his stuff has gotten incredibly biochemical, to the point where like he sends me protocols sometimes and I don't know what I'm reading.
Yeah, unfortunately, I find that happens with people. Like, we come in with good intentions. We're like, guys, just go out into the sun, just do this. But because of like all the programming, people are like, they don't want to do it unless there's like some big complex reasoning behind it or something. So it's kind of like, there's a book called The Quantum Doctor, and it says, as a quantum physician, your job is to keep your patient busy while nature does the healing. And so, yeah, that's kind of where a lot of the people in the space went. Unfortunately, I haven't.
I have an interesting fact for y'all that is along the same line. So my passion in life is primarily working with animals. And something that's very interesting is livestock, like larger livestock like horses and cows, actually require for their fertility a very specific amount of hours of sunlight in the day. And it's something that's like a requirement for their breeding. They cannot reproduce without it. And the same thing goes for other animals in the animal kingdom, where their fertility is based off of the amount of hours, or like sunlight versus nighttime hours that there are. And you can see kind of like the I guess some of the similarities when it comes to that. Like sheep and goats require less sunlight, but they still require a certain like number of hours of sunlight throughout the day to be fertile. So
have you read the book Health and Light by John Ott, Tia?
No, I have not, but I will.
You should do it. It's literally 200 USD, but if you can get it online for free in a PDF form.
Oh, even better.
Yeah, but
And you
John,
have-
you
you gotta have
guys.
a computer. I hate reading on a device.
Actually, guys, I have exciting
personally-
news. My boyfriend works for a company called Daylight Computer. And so I actually just got a prototype yesterday. It's actually a computer that emits zero blue light completely and no flicker at all. So that's coming out soon, but it's not hard launched yet.
It's what?
Pardon?
It emits what?
No blue light at all.
No way, I want one.
Yeah, so it reflects just sunlight. So it actually, if my issue is that I go to use my computer outside and the glare is so bad that I can't see my screen. This
Exactly.
actually gets less glare when you go into the sun because it's reflecting the blue light. I interviewed the owner on my podcast, actually. He's incredible, man. He's beautiful. He's gone through so much to get this product out there. It's just crazy. And so yeah, and it has zero flicker too, because like flicker, when something becomes more bright, that's actually because the flicker rate's faster, like Christmas lights, which is really bad. Like it influences seizures as well in children and things. So having no flicker is just incredible. But I wanted to quickly mention this book, guys, because you can get it as a PDF online. It's just such an easy read. Like it's by a guy. So a guy named John Ott. I don't know if you remember the old Walt Disney films, but before we could do videos, they did time-lapse photography. So he took all these photos of plants as they were growing. It made it look like they were dancing. So that was like the Walt Disney flowers. So he did that. And so he kept getting commissioned more and more work. And he never went to university, nothing. So all of his work is done through observation. And so for the Walt Disney Secrets of Life film, he got commissioned to do the reproductive cycle of pumpkins. So he needed to get pumpkins to then grow their flowers. And pumpkins, they produce male and female flowers, and then bees cross-pollinate them, and then they grow more baby pumpkins, right? So he had this big greenhouse and this big setup. And then his pumpkins grew, and he took all the images every 5 minutes, was taking a photo of the pumpkins. Then it grew flowers, and it only grew male flowers. And he was like, what on earth? Like, why are they all male flowers? Like, I'm going to have to start all over again next season in the growing season. And he was like, what? He was like, what could it be? And then he, realized that, what happened? He was growing them under a certain lighting. Then next year, they were out of that light. So he used like a pink daytime light because the lights were like very different back then. And then this season, all the flowers were female. And he was like, what the hell? And then he realized that the light frequency, so blocking the blue or the red, actually dictated the sex of the flowers. Now, this actually got published in New York Times, and a Chihuahua breeder, and you can actually see all this online still, the documents, which is incredible. So it's not just in the book. A Chihuahua breeder reached out to him and said, hey, I've been having a lot of trouble getting females in my litters because obviously they are worth way more money. And they're all males, and I don't know like what's happening. Can you help me? So they ran a trial together. The dogs are actually kept in the basement under artificial lighting. And for 5 years, all of like 90% of her litters were all males, which is not profitable. So they actually opened up the windows at the back of the basement and pushed all the dog cages and all the dog pens to the outside and got them outside. Her next litter was 90% all females. And now she was like the most profitable Chihuahua breeder, like in her state. And they did it with fish as well. So you can actually do it at home if you want to. If you put like a red light above the fish tank, all the fish turn to be females, and vice versa. It's actually incredible. The same guy, he actually had arthritis. It's actually really sad. He got really bad arthritis in his hip, John Ott. And so when he was photographing like apples growing in trees outside, he had to go up a ladder, and he couldn't do this anymore. And he couldn't go down to his basement because going up and down the stairs was really hurting his hips. And he thought, well, maybe because he's older now, like he's actually realized what light does for our body. He's like, maybe if I go to Florida, because he lived in Oregon, and go to the beach, the sunlight will heal my arthritis. And he tried that and it didn't work. And he was like very deflated. And then one day his glasses broke. He was outside and his glasses actually fell off, and he had to wait a week for them to get fixed. 4 days later, he realized his arthritis pain was gone. Then he realized it was because his glasses were no longer blocking the light coming into his eyes. So he took his glasses off. He went to Florida. 2 weeks later, he was completely cured of arthritis. He was like, his wife thought he was insane. He had no pain, nothing, was completely fine,
Okay,
which is incredible.
I have little questions related to those
Sorry.
things. No worries. You're amazing. So I am building a house right now, and it has been my intention to use amber light bulbs in my house, and I just prefer the light, and this information was with me in that decision.
Mhm.
And but also I highly doubt we'll use them very much, but we have these recessed lights, and they're all LED lights.
Mm.
I was, wait a minute. I just don't want them. I don't. Anyway, so but you can still have an amber color, and this is my question, because LEDs are light emitting diodes. They're not
Mhm.
a light. They're not the
Mhm.
same like frequency. And so I want to know if the color has a bearing on that, or if it's just it doesn't matter because of the kind of technology it is.
I don't know if I know the right answer to that one. My
Okay.
instant answer is no.
No, what?
But like no, it doesn't block the blue light, even if it's an amber. But my boyfriend's does all that stuff. So he's like got a master's in electrical engineering and does all the light stuff. So I'll have to ask him about that, Emily, and get back to you. But the LEDs, like if you can get hold of incandescents or halogens, like they're so much better because what LEDs actually are is like they're energy efficient, right? So why are they energy efficient? Well, actually, so if you put 100% of power into like a incandescent light bulb, 95% of that is actually given off as heat, which is actually infrared light that we can't see, but our body actually utilizes, right, to keep us hydrated, to keep us healthy. And then only 4% of that's actually visible light that we can see. So that's inefficient in the eyes of big energy, because they're like, oh, we don't even need that 96% of infrared. Whereas if you actually have an LED, 100% of the energy that goes in is the 100% energy that's used to give light. So it's more energy efficient.
Right. And that's why
it's not efficient.
Right.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately like the way it was engineered. And it wasn't something that I had, this is my first rodeo. I definitely would do things differently if I were like starting from scratch. But, they were designing from an engineering standpoint according to efficiency. So if if we change all these light bulbs to halogen or incandescent bulbs, it would our wiring wouldn't be able to support it. And I mean, like I said, we don't need to use a lot of the light, period.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm leaning, but I also like to have that as an option, and I prefer the feeling of amber light when after the sun goes down. But I didn't know if that was providing any benefit biologically or if it was just an aesthetic thing. But you can tell me.
Yeah, it's just more so like you just want to get rid of the blue light after sunset. Like there was a study done in France where there was a gentleman in complete darkness, and those little lights the doctors shine in your eyes, they literally shined that light on the back of his knee for 30 seconds, and it was enough to decrease his melatonin by 70%. So like that's how
sensitive,
intentional we need to be about blocking blue light. And depending on how high your melatonin is depends on how it regulates apoptosis. So we want melatonin to be like maxed, basically, is what I say. So suppressing as least of that as possible.
You are talking about screen light, or are you talking about all like our light that we switch on in the kitchen?
All light that emits blue light, it needs to be gone after sunset. I wish there was a different way that I could tell people. Like I wish I could be like, oh no, it's fine if it's just like 50% or whatever, but I wouldn't be doing anyone.
No, I know. I just I don't think I'm gonna get my husband is always like, why are you sitting in the dark? I'm like, 'cause it's
leave me alone.
But so maybe I'll get him on board. I remember yes, but you would like to sit in the dark in the daytime. That's what always was confusing me about that.
No, what I didn't like when I lived with someone, like the first thing when I wake up, they'd have the TV on and the kitchen light on, and I
Yeah.
would like go in there like squinting my eyes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't want to interrupt. You said you had a couple of them out. Go ahead and finish. I'll
Yeah.
now
Well,
ask
so
her
my other question is,
something after
we
you.
talked about our mitochondria and how we get it from our mothers, and that their lineage is very impactful to the way that we are wired to receive light, sun, all of the above. And I seem to be much more comfortable in warm places where I don't have to wear tons of clothes and I can be exposed to the elements more. Like I went to, the States in the winter for a couple weeks, and it was so great to see my baby ski, and I did all the bundling, and I like made it work and really tried to enjoy myself. But I just really did not like being so covered when I was outside and indoors as much. But I know that seasonality is like part of this natural cyclical nature that we have as people, but especially as women. And like going into that like hibernation phase is an appropriate part of our like long-term cycle or arc. I and also like right now strawberries are in season and citrus is in season, and it's like February, March, but that's what's growing where I live. And so I'm loving it because also everything is in season right now. Everything grows well here, so I have like an abundance of options. But then the concept of eating seasonally and sort of like riding the wave of the seasons is not as available to me. And I was wondering, is that something that we're supposed to try to like manufacture a little bit, not manufacture artificially, but like it's cold, so like should I be like outside in the cold 50-60 degree cold with less clothing on and feeling the cold and trying to like expose myself to that? Or what are your insights?
Yeah, so just as light and dark is like a coupled system, so is winter and summer. And so there's a few different things that you have to take into account. It's like leptin sensitivity as well, and all these things. But getting into winter, like that's important to embrace that, because what that actually does is it reduces your mitochondrial percent heteroplasmy, which is super important. So when we're living in an environment that's a comfy 22, 25 degrees all the time, Celsius, not Fahrenheit, that wouldn't be so comfortable. Yeah, that's just not really doing what nature designed for us in terms of like this expansion, this decrease. Also like importing foods, like we shouldn't really be eating foods that are imported, because in wintertime, and this is so complex, and I hate saying this stuff because I feel like I overwhelm people, but like that cold and that lack of UV, like let's say I live in Wyoming, that's actually signaling to my mitochondria to uncouple and produce more infrared heat, which is going to expand and structure my metabolic water to actually turn into a battery. And that's the work of Dr. Gerald Pollack. And you can go research that yourself. And we can post some links somewhere. And so like that's a way for our body to actually get energy in a time where there's not as much carbohydrates in our environment. It also turns on the part of our body that digests fat and digests protein as a fuel source rather than carbohydrates. When we're in high UV, that upregulates cytochrome 1 of our electron transport chain, which tells our body to that we're going to absorb high UV light through carbohydrates. And so it's our environment, when we let ourselves actually get, connected to our environment, that signals to our body how to run as well, and influences the size and shape of proteins and things. So yeah.
Live where we can lean into where we live, eat what's grown here, even if that is strawberries in February. But also, I mean, I guess it just comes down to like we don't use AC, we don't use heat. If it's cold, we put more clothes on, So we have a lot of ways that we are not interfering with nature. But most of us are mutts. Most of us have lineage from many different places in the world. Most of us travel, and like so getting that really pure signal from the lineage, the mitochondria, and the environment is quite difficult in a modern life. And
well, it's more, sorry.
It's
important to just embrace the environment that you're in. Like when I started learning this, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, my mom's a redhead and has white, skin, and my dad's like half Aboriginal. Like what am I supposed to do? But it's more important to just embrace like where you are. That's the most important thing. And then, you know, you have to keep in mind that perhaps, you know, for me, I'm actually optimized to get cold. I need to be tapping into that signal every now and then. And so if you're actually truly embracing your environment, even the winter months, and mind you, if you do the right things, it actually doesn't feel cold. Like I was walking around today, it's negative like 5 degrees in like just a tank top and some shorts, which is incredible. And if you told me I was doing that a year ago, I'd be like, no way. Like I was so cold sensitive. But so like every now and then tapping into, and if you actually are embracing your environment, like I said, you know, usually anywhere it gets cold enough to be healthy. Doing ice baths, you know, it doesn't even have to be an ice bath. It can be like a cold walk or a shiver walk, or you know, utilizing ice in the mouth in the mornings. Just there's all these different ways to get cold that can allow you to kind of tap into that ancestral lineage and support your body if that's where you're designed to live. I see a lot of problems in women who come from, like who have direct family members from, like, let's say Africa or like somewhere where the temperature is pretty extreme. So it's either really hot or really cold, especially Australia. And then they're just at the same environment all the time. I see really big problems in their fertility health, especially with endometriosis, PCOS. And when you start to actually get them hot, so getting hot, getting in the UV, and then utilizing something like an ice bath, and mind you, like this needs to be a specific program depending on what your hormones are doing. You can't just go jump into like a 0 degree ice bath if that's what your body doesn't need. Or that could be really beneficial depending on what your symptoms are. But I see massive improvements in fertility. Like I've had women who are postmenopausal actually get their cycle back. I'm like, Kiera, I didn't want my cycle back. And I'm like, oh, sorry about that. But so yeah, these things are really important for fertility health. Yeah. And whoever thought that simple changes could breed such a big improvement.
When they get their cycle back, send them to me, because they're not supposed to be upset about that, but they've been brainwashed to hate their cycle. So that's a whole new problem.
I have clients who are like women, well, I don't know, because a lot of my clients now, they're like, yeah, you know, I'm probably going into menopause soon or something. And I'm like, that's okay. That's a time where your body has gone from breeding life to now your job is to give your wisdom and your acquired knowledge to the younger generations. And so I try and frame it in that light. I think it's quite nice.
Absolutely. It's the truth. And it's such a perfect segue that I have to utilize it. And also are nearing our end. So thank you, Kiera. I think everyone here, if you're here, then you have my email. If you have my email, then you are able to send me any questions that you have about like about the subject. That, I mean, as far as like a high level kind of question, like the computer that you're talking about, or some products that are on the market today that can be utilized to kind of like ease into this lifestyle, because obviously jumping into total darkness after sunset is not something that everyone's going to be willing to do right away. Baby steps. But as far as the cycle is concerned, our next women's circle is about embodied fertility, and not just the idea of preventing or welcoming pregnancy, but really understanding hormonal physiology on an energetic level. And how, I mean, this couples very well with just, you know, being in touch with your body and being in touch with nature, and how we are not broken. Our, you know, painful periods, we're just taught that periods are like this huge inconvenience, and women get the short end of the stick. They have the period and then they have to birth the baby, and, you know, and then their bodies are ruined, and, you know, all of these terrible things that we're taught societally. And the concept of just connecting with our natural physiology and nature, which is what we're talking about here, really helps prepare you for the idea that your body is not broken. It's doing all the right things. And if it's uncomfortable, if it's in dis-ease of some kind, it's a communication. It's just asking for attention in that department. And so this woman is incredibly, she knows the science of hormonal physiology very well. And she also is very just tapped into the creative power of female hormonal physiology, and helps us to reorient towards our bodies and, as women, our wombs and our cycles in a more positive way. Because generally speaking, like if we're at odds with our environment and with our body, then we are inherently going to be sick in one way or the other, mentally or physically. So it is about kind of getting everything in coherence, like just seeing the sun and not being afraid, seeing, or bleeding and not feeling burdened or afraid, or, it's about like embracing the fact that we were made in a certain way on this beautiful planet, for a beautifully perfect reason. Like everything that we think we have better figured out than God, we are incorrect. Or, whatever, nature. So all of the science, all of the wisdom that's coming through is just kind of bringing us back to that coherence. The body is intelligent and that nature is our ally. So I want to welcome you guys to join us next month. I want to share or say thank you again to Kiera, and welcome you guys to send any other further questions to my email, and I'll put something together to send out as like a resources email regarding this subject. Okay.
Thank you so much, Kiera. Thank you, Amalia. This was great.
Yeah.
That's okay. Thanks for having me. I just encourage everyone to like really just tap into their environment, just know that you have everything that you need. And that like nature really, we can't biohack, 3.8 billion years of evolution or God's work, whatever you believe in. And my space as well is becoming very inundated with, like, as every space does, with new products and new programs and new everything. But at the end of the day, you don't need that. You don't need to spend money. You actually just need to save your money so you can take your time out of working indoors and just start being outdoors. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate all your attention and your questions and listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kiera, it was really, oh, you gone?
No, go
I'm
ahead.
here.
It was really a pleasure, and your exuberance is really contagious. I loved it. So I know you have to go. If I wanted to ask a couple questions, can I email them to you, Amalia, and get the answers from Kiera?
Yeah, from anyone that's listening, my email is Kiera at kieraleewellness.com, Kiera, and Amelia can send that out too. I have a Twitter account and also an Instagram account where I share like a ton of free information. And then I also have like some other things too, like little programs and things, but like that's not needed. Like literally, if you have a pen and paper and you go through my Instagram feed, like you can pretty much put everything I know into a book. So yeah, enjoy that.
Thank you. Yes, and I will
All right, thank you.
anything coming through on my end, I'll get with you, Kiera, and I'll make it as easy as possible for you. I appreciate everything that you have gifted us.
All good. See you later, guys.
Yeah.